Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of this series on Age of Empires 2 scenario triggers. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a few more advanced triggers, as well as some more specific use cases, and going to be looking a little bit more at some triggers that are used, for example, in specific scenarios, or in much more obscure circumstances than just the basic ones we looked at last time. As well as we are also going to be taking a little bit of a look at the objectives and how those are set, which are also done via trigger. So, with all of that, if you haven't seen part one, I've linked it in the description down below, and let's go right into it. So, with that, let's get right into it. First, let's take a look at the trigger window again. Here, I have a generic scenario editor window, totally empty, just like last time. First, let's tab over to the Triggers tab. Remember, F10 is the Triggers tab if you have function keys. And let's take a look at what's here. Just like last time, I would encourage you to follow along, and even if you want, to pause the video and see if you can't figure out how to do some of this stuff before I show you. So, we went through a lot of the basics last time, so I won't spend any more time going over the basics of triggers. But I do want to show one thing that I deliberately left out last time. If we click the new button, we see here on the right here, these boxes and all of this right here. We will come back to this near the end, but this here is what shows the objectives in scenarios. Both the boxes up in the right corner with the checkboxes and in the objectives menu. Trigger description is the longer version in the menu, and short description here is the little note up in the top right corner with the checkboxes. So I just wanted to point that out because I'm sure that was some people wondering. So now with that, let's jump right into creating some triggers. So let's say first off that we want to simulate a night attack. This happens in some of the scenarios. Ragendra 1, I can recall, and I'm sure some others. So first, let's add our new condition and new effect. So for the effect, there is actually an effect called change color mood. And as we can see here, we have several different color moods here. And this is just basically the lighting. And we will see what that means here in a little bit. But we're going to switch that to night. Quantity is the time it takes to move from the color it's on to the color it's going to. So we'll set that to 5 seconds. And then we will set a timer here of 5 seconds as well. So 5 seconds into the scenario, it will start changing the color mood. And then that will take 5 seconds. So then let's also add a second trigger here, and we'll add 2 conditions and 2 effects. So for the first effect, we're going to go in here, and we are going to create object, and we are going to use paladins, because why not? They're really strong. And we're going to scroll over here and set location right here. And the second effect is going to be to task those objects, because otherwise they get all bunched up. Now for the 2 conditions. First of all, the simple one, own fewer objects. We're going to use 11 because with own fewer objects, remember, you have to set the quantity to 1 less than you want. So if you want 12 units, you set quantity to 11 because it has to be less than 11, but for some reason it's less than or equal to in this one. So it's paladin. And then this one here is just going to be a limiting factor to stop it from trying to recreate the paladins every time one is killed. There's a lot of ways to do this, a lot of them a lot better than the one I'm using. But we're going to scroll through here. We're going to go all the way down to it's a little bit more defined. Total units owned. And we're going to set that to 12. So total units owned means that, well, it's what it says. Every time a unit is created, it will add 1 to total units owned. And so Once it has 12, then it will no longer create paladins, even if one is killed. So this is just a little bit of a limiting factor here. So right now we have these two triggers, and then we're going to set this one to loop. That's why we have the second condition here, so it'll stop when it's supposed to. And with that, let's go take a look and see what we get. So you can see here, it's blank because we have no units, but as soon as I unpause it, we're going to see what's going on. So you see here, it's calling the paladins in, and there we go. You see, it is shifting to night. And just like that, we have our night mode, and we have, you can't see it because I have no UI up, but there are 12 paladins here. You can see there's the rows of 6. Can't really count, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And so just like that, we have a couple of triggers. We can switch from any color mode we want to any other, and we have 12 paladins ready to go. Alright, now that we have our Nightbraid up and ready to go, let's make things a little bit more interesting by giving them an actual enemy to fight. In this case, we're going to go with this Bengali castle right here. Why Bengalis? Because I like the Bengali castle. Yep, that's it. As you can see, it's guarded by all of these halberdiers right here. And since all we've got is paladins, we really don't want to have to fight them. But luckily, it's nighttime, and so those halberdiers can't see our paladins attacking. Or at least that's the justification I'm going with. So, how do we simulate units being unable to be seen and attacked? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So we're just going to add one new effect here to our trigger 1 here, and that is down here, disable unit targeting. So player 1, paladin. So what this does is this makes it impossible to attack the specified units. It means you can't attack them, you can't select them for either ranged attacks or for direct melee attacks. They're visible and they can be seen, but they can't be actually attacked. But we don't want this to be too easy. So we do want to be able to attack them eventually. So we're going to add another trigger here. New condition, new effect. So condition. And let's go with, once again, our accumulate attribute trigger. This one I really like in case you didn't notice. And we're going to go down here to P. Rather, we're actually going to go up here to this one right here, killed P2. We're going to set that to 1. And what this does is killed P2 is how many units that the source player, in this case player 1, has killed of player 2's. So as long as we don't kill any player 2 units, this won't trigger. But if we do, then player 2 is going to notice us and start attacking. And they're going to start attacking because of the enable unit targeting command. Same as disable, just the opposite. Makes it possible to attack them again. But that's not all. Since we're here, we're going to make this even more complicated because I think that hopefully everyone can follow along and want to be a little more time efficient than last time. I'm going to add 2 new conditions. Condition 2 here, we are going to go with object HP. Set this object here, and let's go with 3750, just because that's a good number. And then condition 1, we're going to use this one here, condition separator. So you can see that's an OR. With this separator, we can set up an either or command. So now it is either one of these 2 conditions has to be met in order to enable unit targeting. Typically, it's all conditions have to be met, but with this one, it's just one of the 2. So if we accumulate 1 player 2 kill, or we damage the castle below 3750 HP, then we enable unit targeting. So let's go check it out and see what happens. Alright, so here we are. Once again, black screen because we've got no units, but let's take a look at what happens. So, our paladins come out. It switches to night mode just like before. And here we go, 12 paladins ready to go. So we're going to go attack them. Go down here. The castle's over here a little bit, I believe. There it is. And you can see, no matter how close we get, we don't get attacked. The units just completely ignore us. But if we let our paladins do what paladins like to do, Well, watch this. As soon as he dies, they all start attacking us. Suddenly, unit targeting is enabled. Well, that's not great. So, let's try that again and see if we can't do it a little bit more stealthily this time. Alright, so let's try this again. As soon as we unpause here, here come our paladins just like before, and night falls. Perfect time for a sneak attack. So there we go. 12 paladins ready to go. The castle, I believe, is down here a little bit. There it is. Just like before, they completely ignore us. And we start attacking the castle. And it'll take a minute. These paladins aren't all that great against buildings, but as soon as they do enough damage to the castle, we will see they suddenly start attacking. Just so now, suddenly, we have to turn and deal with those halberdiers before we can finish off the castle. And you can see that we lost, I believe, looks like 2 paladins. And so there you go. Simple as that. Alright, now that I've mentioned it already, let's take a deeper look at the object separator and the condition joiner. So the condition separator we already talked about. It's pretty straightforward. It's just making it an either or. So instead of needing to fulfill both conditions, it can fulfill one or the other. Well, we also have the condition joiner, which can be used together with the condition separator to create a more complicated arrangement. You can see here we have these 2 conditions joined together, and then here we have this condition as an OR. So right now, this trigger is set up that if we do either a timer and selecting this house here, or we select this hut right here, then it will create a paladin in the square right here. So you can see that and is the default. You have to complete trigger 0, condition 0 rather, and condition 1. But you can also use it with the OR to create a and or scenario. It's a way to set up a bunch of conditions that need to go to the same effect without having to make a bunch of different triggers that all have the same effect. So let's take a look and see what we get. Before we do, you can see that the trigger is looping, just so we can see it work in multiple different ways, and I can explain it a little better. So let's take a look. So here we go. We're paused just like normal, but here we go. Let's take a look. So you can see if we click here, if we unpause, that'll help a little. We click here, and you can see that it'll call paladins every time we click it. And if we click this one, they'll take every 10 seconds. And the timer resets every time the trigger fires. So you can count off there that we have to click it, and versus here, it's just the one. It's calling them immediately. And so just like that, you can see, good example there of how you can use triggers to join and separate to make multiple different groupings of conditions to fire the same effect in the same general area. So this object joiner, object separation also works for basically anything, including something like defeating players. It gives you multiple options. You can see here we have 2 identical triggers. This one's for player 2 and this one's for player 3. And you can see here that they're set up so you can have 2 different victory conditions. This one here, the top one, own fewer objects, town center, and own fewer objects than 1, in this case, villagers, or we destroy all military units and all barracks. It's the same down here. And so what this is set up to do is gives us 2 different ways to defeat both players. Either we destroy all of their villagers and their town center, or we destroy all of their military units and all of their barracks. We have two players, so you can see both different mechanisms working in the same little run here. So let's take a look, add in some units while we're going, might as well. Add in some player one units here. My favorite little guys there, I love them. And then add in some paladins again, because why not? I like paladins. And now let's go take a look and see what happens with our separated and joined together triggers here. All right, here we go. You can see this time I've got the UI on because otherwise you can't see the players being defeated when they are. So here we go. Let's focus on player two first. Everyone's on no attack, so they only do what they're told. So first we're going to send the barbarians in and destroy the town center. Meanwhile, we're going to send our paladins down here to take out the two villagers. So you see the town center falls, and only when the two are defeated does the player get defeated. Those guys are actually going to take him out, that's fine. And for them, we're going to do the opposite. Going to take out the barracks, and then we're going to also take out the two champions. You can see, just like that, we are victorious. All right, and let's move on to the final part of what I want to talk about today, and that is these trigger boxes here. As I mentioned earlier, these are the boxes that make objectives show up. It's what we use to write our objectives and to show all of that stuff. As you can see here, we have trigger description and short description. I mentioned those earlier. So in trigger description, we would have, for example, the whole objective. In this case, defeat the Bengalis by destroying their town center, if I could spell correctly, but it's fine. And then in the short box over here, we would have something more like defeat the Bengalis with a little bit less detail. And so then down here, these two are important. This, if this is not checked yes, this will not show up in the menu. Same here. This will not show up on screen unless this box is clicked to yes. You can ignore the string table ID. I don't actually know what it is. I'm sure it's something that developers used. I've never used it. And so then we have over here, make header. We don't want to check this box. This makes, in some of the scenarios, I think especially uh, for example, Victor's Vanquish scenarios, they have headers, and it's basically just header text like you would see in a Word document, bold and very large. We don't want that here. And then mute objectives, that will enable or disable the trumpet sound that you get when an objective is completed. And then description order is interesting. For some reason, 0 is the very bottom. So putting this as number 0, then if the next trigger was description order 1, that one would appear above this one. I don't know why they did that. It's backwards in my head, but description order 0 pins it to the very bottom. And then also, if we want to add the checkboxes for the objectives, we just do it like this. We add a plus sign before the description. And so let's copy this. Then if we want to do it as a secondary objectives, we would do a minus sign, just like this. And let's set this, change this, because we want to have them be distinct enough to tell them apart, so we can see what we're looking at. And we're going to set this one to description order 1, so we can tell the difference. And you can see the triggers aren't valid. That doesn't matter. They'll show up anyway. It just means that they won't get checked off. But actually, since we're here, we might as well add a condition to when fewer objects, 0, in the center, and same thing here. Slipped away, and just like that. And now let's go take a look in the scenario and see what we get and see if we can't tell these objectives and how they work. All right, and so we're here once again. Game is paused, so the triggers haven't shown up yet, but as soon as I unpause, you're going to see them. There we go. So you can see here that, like I said, defeat the Bengalis is on bottom, defeating the Goths is up top, the primary objective checkbox and the secondary objective checkbox. And then here, same thing. District number 0 pins to the bottom, 1 pins to the top, and we have these two different things here. So now let's take a look at what happens once we destroy the town centers. You can see here, take them a couple volleys, but as soon as they do, you can see that as soon as the town center is destroyed, the checkbox is checked. And same thing over here, as soon as we destroy this town center, that gets checked. And up here, it gets crossed off too. So there you go, objectives. Pretty simple to make. You just have to set up the text and click all the right buttons. And that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully everyone was able to follow along and learn a little bit about some more advanced triggers, and hopefully by now you've gained some more understanding and confidence in how to use these triggers, not just the ones I've shown you, but just in general. Uh, Next video, we're probably going to start looking at the AI scripts to take a better look and better understanding of how the AI thinks and operates. So keep an eye out for that, and until next time, thank you for watching.